G'day everybody and welcome to the Absolute Beginner video tutorial for Premiere Pro CC 2021. Thought I'd make a video showing absolute beginners that are intimidated by this software, the absolute fundamentals and everything you need to know. Down below you'll see everything's timestamped. If you want to jump to a particular section of the video, just click on the timestamp and it'll take you straight to that section. So I'm going to jump into it and we're going to work on a sample project. And unfortunately, I won't be supplying this footage to you. However, use your own footage and follow along with me. So let's jump into it. Now I've got Premiere Pro open in front of me. We're going to click on New Project and we're just going to call this the best example ever, right? We're going to give our project a name. We're going to give it a location. I'm going to dump it on my desktop here somewhere and make sure under General, under Renderer, hit the drop down menu and just make sure you've got GPU acceleration selected or CUDA and then click OK. So this will launch our project, our brand new project, and click on editing at the top here and you'll see that there's 4 empty panels. So we have a blank canvas to work with. Down the bottom left hand corner here is where we import all of our footage. You can either drag your footage into this section of the software or you can just double click on it here and then you can just find your footage and then just import it directly like that. Now I've been using Premiere Pro for about 5.5 years consistently. I've made over, 1,400 videos now, lots of videos for Amazon Prime and my multiple YouTube channels. And one of the best pieces of advice I think I can give an absolute beginner is make sure, or at least get into the habit of organizing your footage up front into separate folders. This is something which will take time to get used to, but I'm planting the seed now. Just start getting used to putting everything in folders, because when you're working with bigger projects and you have your music and your images and you're working with multiple cameras and everything's just chucked into one folder, it's incredibly difficult to find stuff. So on your screen right now, we have a basic folder structure, right? So all my background music goes in that folder, all of my camera M5 footage in that one, my GoPro footage, my images, my sound effects. This is just a general structure. And then all I do, once I've organized my footage into folders inside of Windows or your Mac or whatever, then you just go and click on the folder and then import the folder directly into Premiere Pro as such. So I'm just going to do this very quickly now. Okay, so now that we have all of our folders imported into Premiere Pro, there's different ways you can display the layout here. I'll show you real quick. So we have icon view and we have list view over here, right? It's up to you which one you select. List view, sometimes easier to see all the folders. Then you can just click on the arrows here, it drops down all of the contents of those folders, or what they call bins. If you want to create extra bins, then you can click over here where it says new bin and you can just call this whatever you want, right? If you want to delete the bin, you just select it and press delete. So now that we've got our footage imported, the next thing I want to show you is how to create a sequence. Now there's different ways of doing this, but the easiest way as an absolute beginner is to actually go into your footage. And for example, I've got all of my clips here from my EOS M5 camera. Click on list view and I have a look to see the frame rate. So we've got 50 frames per second and these clips were shot at 1920 by 1080, okay? If I go to my GoPro clip, that one there, and I go to the list view, it's shot at 25 frames per second. So essentially I'm wanting to create a sequence that reflects my frame size and my frame rate. That's just the absolute beginner, thing to think about. There's other considerations which I talk about in other videos, but that's all you're really thinking about is creating a sequence reflecting frame rate, right? And your frame size. So in this case, I've got most of my clips shot at 50 frames a second at 1920 by 1080. So all you need to do is find one of those clips that most represents the content you've shot, right click on it, go to new sequence from clip, and then that will automatically create a sequence based on the settings of that particular clip. The name of the sequence will be named after that clip, as you can see on your screen here. You can just right click on that, go to reveal sequence in project, and then you can just give the sequence a name. So we can just call this one sample project. Oh, that's not right. The best sample project, right? So we can give that one a name. That's the name of our sequence. And it drops the clip in there by default, the one that we've right clicked on. So for now, I'm just going to delete that. we have a sequence created. And that sequence is over here inside your bin. What I like to do is I like to take that sequence, go Control X, and then go up, and then just go Command or Control V, and that will move the sequence out of the bin and keep it separate. I like to keep my sequences separate from everything else, so it's sitting right here. Sometimes I create a separate bin, I call it sequences, and then I drag the sequences inside of its own bin. Now for the magic, now for the best bit. This is where you go through your footage and start compiling a basic video. So we're gonna go to GoPro, we're gonna go to this clip here, double click on it, and it's gonna open up over in the top left-hand corner. This is called our source monitor box. Now, if I click in between these boxes here, I can actually change the size of these panels. As you can see, I can make that smaller or bigger, right? So you can have a fiddle around with this. If you're not seeing what I'm seeing, just make sure you've clicked on editing at the top here. That will show you exactly what I'm seeing on my screen. So we're on the same page here. Or you can go to Window, Workspaces, and go Reset to save layout. So all we need to do is we sift through our footage and we figure out what we want to use. So I'll go through here. So that's essentially what I want to use. I want to use that clip in my sequence. So I'll open up my sequence again because it's closed. And then I will just take this clip here and I will just drag it straight into the timeline window. And in this case, this box is going to come up here because remember, this clip was shot at 25 frames per second. You're going to come across this as an absolute beginner. For now, I'm going to select Keep Existing Settings. And I have my clip here on my timeline. Now, just to show you a couple of things inside the timeline, I'll just move this to make it bigger. So we have all our video track layers, V1, V2, V3, and our audio track layers here, A1, A2, A3. And you can make these tracks bigger or smaller by just clicking and making them smaller like this. Or you can just run your mouse over here, hold down the Alt key or the Option key, and use your scroll wheel on your mouse to make the tracks bigger or smaller. You can do the same thing with the video track layer as well, right? So that's just a nice way of seeing the waveform of the audio. It just helps you with your editing workflow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at each of my clips here, going into my camera, going to icon view. And with icon view, in this particular case, I like to use icon view because I can see exactly what I'm working with in my footage. So I can just have a look through here quickly and go, oh, I want to use this one here. So I double click on that clip and then I just scrub through. Right, I just scrub through and I select the bit that I want and I take my little scrubber here and where it says mark in, I select that and then I just select what I want by scrubbing across and then just selecting mark out or shortcut O on the keyboard. And then I can just move my playhead over here to the very end, and then I can either use insert or overwrite, which I talk more about in other videos, but real quick, we're just going to hit insert and it drops that small shaded piece onto our timeline. And then all I do is I just continue to go through each of my clips here in my media bin, and I just have a look through to see what I want to use, and I either hit I on the keyboard or mark in, which is there on the program, or sorry, on the source monitor box, scrub along, and then O on the keyboard where it's shaded. That's what I've selected. And then again, I'm going to hit insert and that's going to drop it straight onto the timeline. So I'm going to spend a few minutes here going through this footage here and then dropping it all into my timeline. And then I'm going to show you more about how to use some of the tools inside of Premiere Pro and the timeline window. So I'm going to show you how to do some basic cuts and how to use some of the tools inside Premiere Pro to clean up your own dialogue using my one as an example. So we have a little toolbox over here, right? And the ones as a beginner that you need to really be concerned about is the selection tool, which is shortcut V on the keyboard, and the eraser tool, which is shortcut C on the keyboard, where you just cut stuff. And then the type tool or the text tool, which is shortcut T on the keyboard, which I'll show you how to use in just a second. So the selection tool just means that you can kind of click and move clips around on the timeline like this. Very easy to do. So I'm using the selection tool right now. I can move videos onto different video track layers and audio onto different audio track layers as such. Okay, so that's the selection tool, and then the razor tool is what I'm going to show you how to use and how to trim your footage. So I'm going to play this back real quick.
Welcome, my friends.
So there's a bit of a pause in the beginning there, and as you can see, and this is a perfect example, we actually have some black video right here. This is where there's no video whatsoever. So you can just right click on this area and click on ripple delete, and that would just clear out that black video. And then over here, we've got some pause, right? So we just take our razor tool and we just cut, and then we just get our selection tool, select that piece, and then press delete. And as you can see, we have another black video area. So we just right click, go ripple delete. Now there are faster ways that I teach in intermediate in the intermediate course, which I'll show you there. But essentially as a beginner, it's okay. You can get away with that for now. Okay, so all I got to do is just go through here, make sure that the audio waveform is nice and big, just to make that really big on your timeline, just so you can see what's going on with the waveform. And then take your razor tool and just cut, hit your selection tool, select, delete, right click, close it, right? As I said before, that's just, as an absolute beginner, you can get away with that. And let's play that back.
Basic text. I'll also show you how to remove.
So that's how you use the razor tool to make basic cuts in your video as such. Also as well, you can take any clip on your timeline, and if you run your mouse over to the edge of that clip, you can actually make that clip longer, or you can make that clip shorter. This is just a very easy way of trimming or shortening or lengthening a clip. So just you'll see the bracket will change, just click and drag it out, or click and drag it back in again. So now I'm going to show you how to speed up or slow down any of your clips in your project. So I'm just going to take any of these clips here, for example. I might take this one here, okay? I'll drag it out here and I'll show you how to do it. I am going to remove the audio from this as well. So I'm going to go right click, and where it says unlink, click on that, and I'm going to delete that audio. And then here, I'm just left with the video clip by itself. So there's different ways you can do this. You can just go right click, go to speed and duration, and where it says 100%, I select 50% because I want to reduce the speed by half, hit enter, and then now I've essentially slowed down that clip there at 50%. Nice and slow right there. If I want to speed it up, I just go right click, speed duration, and maybe set 200%. And if I play this back, I've essentially sped up the clip there. So that's how you can easily speed up and slow down clips in your timeline. When it comes to transitions, I will show you how to do basic transitions inside Premiere Pro. Now, the three that are very common to use are dip to white, dip to black, and cross dissolve. So I'm going to mute the audio track layer here to demonstrate this, and I'm going to do some basic cross dissolve and dip to white, dip to black for these few clips here on the timeline. So just click on these two arrows, go down to effects, and here I'm going to type in dip. And if I type in dip, you'll see here dip to black and dip to white will pop up. So I just click on and drag dip to black, for example, and I drop it in between two clips here on the timeline, right? I'll just zoom in so you can see that. So now we have dip to black placed between these two clips. If I play this back, we now have a dip to black, and then it fades into the next clip, right? And then dip to white, I'll demonstrate that on the next two clips. So I'll play that back, and we have a nice dip to white, and before it fades into the next clip. And the last one I'll show you is the cross dissolve. So back in here, we type in cross, and because this is like a search box up here, right? So when I type in cross, it pops up down here called cross dissolve. And I click and drag that over and drop it in between two clips here. And I'll play this back. And we have a nice little cross dissolve. Now you can change the duration of the transition, zooming into the timeline and selecting the transition. You'll notice that the bracket will change, the cursor will change to a bracket. I can just click and drag that out to lengthen the duration of that cross dissolve so that it takes effect over a greater period of time. If I want to shorten the duration of that, I could just bring it in like this, and that will shorten the duration of the cross dissolve, right? I can do that with any of the transitions here. Now, I can also do something else. If I just right click between these two clips here, you'll see here where it says apply default transitions. So by default, you'll notice over here, there's a little blue box around constant power, right? So that's the default audio transition. That's why there's a blue box around it. And the default the default video transition is cross dissolve with a blue box around that. So by just right clicking and clicking on apply default transitions, it will automatically apply a cross dissolve and a constant power, because that's what I've selected over here. By default, that's actually what the default is in the software. I can actually right click on any one of these other effects, and I can select these as my new default transition. Or I can go down to here, and here where it says iris cross or cross zoom, I can right click and set that as my default transition for video transitions. It's up to you. So that's how you do basic transitions inside of Premiere Pro. Okay, so how do you add still images? You might have some still images that you want to use inside your project. So I've actually got a still image here that I imported before. Let's have a look. We got images, and I got this image here, right? So just say I want to drop that into my project. I just click, drag it over onto Video Track Layer 2, drop it over the top of my footage. Now you'll notice something here. The image is taking up a much bigger space than the actual size of the frame itself. So you can either click on the image here, go over to Effect Controls, go to where it says Motion, and where it says Scale, you can reduce that down by reducing the scale. Or there's a much faster way of doing it, which is right-clicking on the image, and where it says Scale to Frame Size, selecting that, and it will automatically scale that image to the size of the frame, right? So now we've added an image to our project, but just so we want to animate this image a little bit, what do? So select the image over here, go over to Effect Controls, and we're going to create some keyframes just to create a little bit of motion with our image. So where it says Scale, this is where we change the size of the image. Now there's a little clock here, click on that, that drops a little keyframe here, right? And then all I've got to do is move the playhead along, and then I change the scale to, by clicking over here, and I want to zoom in a little tiny bit, say, I don't know, 110%, for example. That drops another keyframe here. So now we have two keyframes. So we're now essentially animating this image. This is a very, very basic animation, just to make your videos more interesting by giving a little bit more movement to your images. So we just click on this keyframe, drag it to the very end, click on this keyframe, drag it to the very beginning, and if I play this back, you'll notice that our image is slowly zooming in. So this is how you create a little bit more interest with your still images. Okay, so now how do you add text? So this is where you will click over here where it says Graphics at the top, and then over here it says Essential Graphics. Now if you don't see that, go to Window, Workspaces, and click on Graphics here, and then click on Essential Graphics here. Make sure there's a tick box there. You'll see Essential Graphics on the right hand side. Now what you'll do is you'll take the Type tool, click on that, and then just click anywhere inside the window here, right? So just click here and then start typing. So I'm going to type in the date, so 20th of September 2021. That's today's date. And then all I got to do is I click on the selection tool. That allows me to then click, and I can move this text anywhere I want inside the frame. I might just drop it down here for now, the bottom left-hand side. Now over on the right-hand side, we've got Essential Graphics, and we can change all of the properties around that text, just like you would anywhere else, you know. So if you have a look closely, we've got the text here, and we can change the alignment here by selecting vertical center and horizontal center. That will move the text to the center there. I'll just move it back there. And you'll see here we can change the font. So I'm going to change this to Bebas just because I can. And then here you can just change all the properties, the size down here. You can change the fill. You can make it a different color if you want. What I like to do is I like to use white text, and the stroke is what I like to change. So click on stroke, click here, and I like to change the stroke to black, right? That gives the text a nice outline. It makes the text stand out a little bit from the background. And then over here, we've got the stroke width. I like to change this to like 2 or 3.0. That gives the stroke a little bit more thickness. And I can change any of these properties here, which you can change in your own time, right? So that's essentially how you add text. Now I'm going to show you how to add motion graphics. Now this is something I wish I learned as an absolute beginner. I didn't actually learn about MoGarts or motion graphics until later on actually. So all you got to do is make sure you're in graphics, essential graphics, then go to browse. And by default, you've got several motion graphics that come with the software. And what you can do is I might just use one of the ones that come with the software. I'm just trying to remember which ones come with the software. I think it's this one here. Okay, so I'm going to get this motion graphic. I'm going to click and drag it over to, say, Video Track Layer 2. And as you can see, if I play this back, we have a nice little motion graphic there, right? So to make changes to the motion graphic, you just click on it, go over to Essential Graphics, go to Edit, and then you can manipulate the shape, the text, and the other shape as well. So we're just going to change the text here. I'm going to call this Brad Newton, right? Just, my name, right? And then I'm just going to go back to my selection tool. And you can, of course, move the motion graphic around. This is also called a lower third. So we're just going to put that lower third somewhere down the bottom there. That's good enough. Or you can just click and drag it with your mouse. If we play this back, we have a nice little motion graphic. Now, just real quick, you can actually get motion graphics for free off websites such as mixkit.co. And if you go to mixkit.co and have a look under Premiere Pro, templates Premiere Pro, you can use all sorts of different motion graphics here, download them from this website, and then you can easily import them into Premiere Pro. I'll show you how to do that real quick. So you go to Browse, Essential Graphics, go Browse, and then down here there's a little plus icon, Install Motion Graphics Template. Right, if you click on that, you can just install well, they call that a MoGart file, that's the name of it, and then you just install it directly into the software that way. There's actually a few different ways of installing MoGarts, but that's all you really need to know as a beginner. So have a play around with these different motion graphics here that come with the software. The ones that I've actually installed recently. So I'll use this motion graphic, drag it over. So this is a motion graphic I actually paid for. You can actually pay for these motion graphics from different websites. And you can, manipulate the color, the text, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll just play this back. This is an example of a motion graphic that I paid for. They get pretty fancy, right? So you get the idea. That's how you play with motion graphics inside Premiere Pro. Okay, so now to the fun stuff of how to add background music and sound effects to your videos. Okay, so I'll show you. We go over to our bin and we look for our background music and we find it there. And we just take that background music and drop it onto Audio Track Layer 2. And then we make that track bigger. Now there's different ways of doing this. You can actually double click with your mouse and that will expand that audio track for you. So I'm just going to make this panel bigger and I'm just going to shuffle this over a little bit, right, as such, just to see more of the timeline there. Cool. So now we have our background music there, but I'm going to reduce the volume. So if I play this back, too loud. So you'll see there's a line here. You can actually make sure you've got the selection tool selected and you can just click and drag that down. You'll see where it says minus 12.8 decibels. So we can reduce the volume essentially by clicking and dragging this line down. They call it a rubber band. If you don't see that line, sometimes it disappears. It's a little funny quirk with Premiere Pro. Go right click, show clip keyframes, go to volume and click on level, right? And that line will appear. Sometimes it disappears for some reason. Okay, so another way you can reduce the volume of the background music is click on the background music here and then go over to Effect Controls and then go to where it says volume, right? Click on volume, just hit the drop down arrow where it says level, right? Just change the value here. And as you change the value here, make it less and less, that line will drop down as well. So there's two ways you can change the volume to make it not as loud. So I'll play this back. So that's how you add background music and how you change the volume of the background music. Very straightforward. And when it comes to adding sound effects, so I'll show you. I am going to go to SFX, so sound effects, and I've got a mouse click, and I've got a typewriter effect. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how to use basic sound effects. So I am going to get my image that I've imported before. We have an image and I want a little mouse click thing to sound when that image pops up. So we're going to take the sound effect, we're going to drop it onto audio track layer 3, and I'm going to essentially align that sound effect essentially where the image kind of starts here, right? So let's play this back. Cool. And then I'm going to add another sound effect, the same sound effect to the very end of the image so that when it clicks off, the image will disappear. Okay, so I'm going to change the timing by clicking and just moving that as such around there. That looks about right. Okay, there we go. Cool. So that's how essentially you add sound effects to your projects. The sound effects that I get my sound effects from Epidemic Sound. I'll link Epidemic Sound up in the top comment for this video. This is where I get all my background music from. This is where I get all my sound effects from. If I click on sound effects here, you got whooshes, you got footsteps, props, ambience, whips, weather, computers, waves. It's unlimited, right? And of course, you got the normal background music as well, which is amazing. I've been using this service for many years. And this is where I've got that particular background music track from as well, the one that I imported before. All came from Epidemic Sound. I've got like a little typewriter here. So this typewriter sound effect, I will just quickly import it there. All right, and I'll show you, I will use a MoGart to demonstrate this very quickly. And so we got typewriter. Okay, so we got typewriter 01. This is a motion graphic. So I'm going to drag this over to the timeline. All right, so I'm going to make that disappear. All right, so essentially what I've done is I've just created a sound effect against the motion graphic there, and then play this back. Okay, so then I click on this and I call this whatever I want, Brad's Awesome Project, right? Something like that. Play that back. Okay, so now I'm going to show you basic color correction and color grading. So this is a whole other topic on itself, but I'll show you how to do it. So go to color, click on color, and then you'll see on the right hand side here it says Lumetri color. If you don't see it, go to window and then go to Lumetri color, make sure that's selected. And essentially what you do is you take your clip, go to Lumetri color, and you've got here several tabs, right? So you've got basic correction, creative, curves, color wheels, blah, blah, blah. Very, very big topic. I'm not going to go into everything in this panel, but basic correction is where you start. And then once you've done everything you need to do inside basic correction, where you change the contrast and the highlights and the shadows and all that stuff, then you move on to creative, which is where you can apply what they call a LUT, or a lookup table, which is essentially like if you think of Instagram and you got filters, right? So LUTs is like the video version of the filters on Instagram. So we go to basic correction. We've got our clip here, got my face here, looks pretty pale, right? Only because I've been in lockdown here for almost, 7 months in Melbourne now. I've been in lockdown, haven't seen much sun. So I've got my clip selected there. I want to put a little bit more life into my face. So I'm going to show you how to adjust the saturation. You just bump that up a little bit just to give my face a little bit more saturation there. And the exposure, I might just drop that a little bit. Right, and the contrast, I might just give it a little bit more contrast, a little bit more punch. The highlights, I might just drop that a little bit. Right, so I'm actually just doing this visually. There are scopes that you can use, but I teach that in the intermediate course. You can just adjust the shadows and so forth. But then once I've done this, I then go to creative, and where it says here, look, I can put whatever filter I want over the top of my video clips. So essentially, if you think of movies that you watch like The Matrix or certain films where the whole film has a certain look to it, then you'll find that that's called a LUT or a lookup table. And again, it's just using a filter on your videos to give them a certain look and feel. By default, Premiere Pro will come with a bunch of these different LUTs that you can apply to your video clips. But generally what I suggest you do as a beginner is get in the habit of using an adjustment layer. So I'll show you real quick. So click on where it says down here, new item, click on that, go to adjustment layer, click on that. For now, click OK. You have an adjustment layer created over there. click and drag that over onto video track layer 4, for example. That creates a brand new video track. Extend that out across all of your clips. Sorry for the dog barking downstairs. Everyone's in lockdown here. And you've got this adjustment layer which now falls across all of your clips on the timeline. And then as opposed to applying the LUT to each individual clip, just click on the adjustment layer and then apply the LUT to the adjustment layer, and everything below the adjustment layer will actually be affected by that LUT. So for example, I've got the adjustment layer selected here, and I'm going to select DK79. All right, that's terrible, but just to demonstrate. Now, I've applied that directly to the adjustment layer. If I take my scrubber, move across all the different clips on the timeline, you'll see that move over here actually, you'll see that the same filter is applied to each of these clips here, but of course, everything under the adjustment layer is affected by the adjustment layer. So that's essentially how you use LUTs. And you can actually go here under creative. Once you've got the LUT selected, you can make adjustments to the intensity, because that's just that particular LUT is too intense. So I dropped that down to maybe 60% or something like that. And then you can create like a faded film look, as you can see there. We can give that a more of an aged look. We can sharpen the footage a little bit, or we can blur it out a little bit more. You can actually double click on these little nodes and that will reset them back to their original settings just by double clicking on them there. And then that's essentially all I want to show you, because this, again, if you go to curves, you can change the different channels, and it's just too, for a beginner, it's just too much. HSL secondary and vignette, again, we won't worry about that in the intermediate course. Otherwise, that's how you do basic correction and color grading. Actually, one other thing I want to show you is adding B-roll to your footage. So you'll see here that I've got myself talking here. And as I'm talking about my trip to Thailand. So what I want to do is get some secondary footage, and I want to overlay that over the top of myself talking. So I take some random clips here and I just select some portions and I drop them over the top of the main clip of me talking. And as I play this back, you'll see me talking, and then you'll see a clip of what I'm talking about. So you'll often hear about this, especially if you're a beginner. You'll definitely hear more about B-roll in your own editing journey. Essentially what they're talking about is that anything that supplements the main story, right? So A-roll is me talking right now, and then B-roll is any footage or cutaway footage that supplements the thing that I'm talking about. So as I'm talking here, you'll see that little clip pops up there, and then it cuts back to me talking again. So that's how you add B-roll. Very, very straightforward. Okay, so I'm going to assume that we have now completed our project and I'm ready to export this for YouTube. So all you got to do is you go over here to File, go to Export, go to Media, and then this little box will pop up here. Make sure under Format you've got H.264 selected. Click on that. And then under Preset, hit that drop down, go down to where it says YouTube 1080p Full HD. Click on that. The output name is just the name of the final product, the final video. In this case, the best sample project.mpeg, MP4. And then all you need to do is scroll down under video. You've got here 1920 by 1080. You don't need to change any of that. And then we move down, don't need to change anything else. And then all you need to do is just here under bitrate settings, just leave it at 16, right? I talk more about this in the beginner course, the full beginner course. If you increase this to like 20 or 25 or 30, the size of the file will increase. It just means that Premiere Pro will leave more of the content inside of your final video. And so the quality is essentially better, but there is a cutoff point, which I talk more about in other videos and in other courses. But just leave it at 16 for now, right? And you'll see that that's the estimated file size, 348 megabytes. And then I go to export. Oh, one other thing. Over here is a little preview window. And this shaded area here, this blue shaded area, is everything that's going to be included in your final product. So you'll see here that we have a whole lot of black area there. So make sure you don't have that in the final video. But I'm just demonstrating this right now. A lot of people make this mistake when they're starting out, is they don't check to make sure they're telling Premiere Pro correctly what to export. So you just use your little scrub tool here, have a quick look through your project like that, and if you see any of this black area, then you need to fix that up. Once you fix it up, click on export and that will export the project out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through everything I've showed you in this video. I'm going to apply it to this particular project, this sample project, and I'm going to end off this tutorial by showing you the end product of this tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm going to clean this up, I'm going to export it, and you're going to be watching it right now. And before I go, if you want, there's a 7-day free trial with Adobe Premiere Pro. I believe they offer a 7-day free trial. Go and check it out. Go and get the software. Go and see if it's something you like. Use this tutorial and play around with the software if you need to watch this video again. And I'll link in the top comments where you can access Epidemic Sound and some other resources and courses and things like that. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you sometime in the future. Thanks for watching.
Welcome, my friends. This is an introduction to a project that we're going to be working on together in this tutorial for absolute beginners like yourself. So my name is Brad, welcome back, and I'm going to show you how to use lower thirds. So right now, down below on the bottom of the screen, you'll see my name pop up. So that's a motion graphic. I'm going to show you how to do that. Today's date is the 20th of September 2021. We're in lockdown here in Melbourne. I'll show you how to add that as some basic text. I'll also show you how to remove annoying pauses in your videos using the basic tools inside of Premiere Pro. I'll also show you how to use B-roll and what that means. So as I'm talking right now, the A-roll, over the top of my words, you'll see clips of the highlight reel that you're about to see of me training, doing Muay Thai training in Phuket, Thailand at TNY Muay Thai. So you would have seen all these clips just pop up on your screen. That's called B-roll. Me speaking is called A-roll. So anyway, this is the intro video. We're going to get into the highlights, and I'll show you how to apply what you'll learn in this tutorial to create something like this, and also the highlights coming up in your own projects. So here are the highlights from my training session at TNY Muay Thai. Enjoy the tutorial. See you soon.
On my own, no fixer. I'm gon' ball, no picker. That I ate those, they live for. Talking on my back, go figure. Whole team eats from spitter. Never was the one to go flicker. No face, no case, no picture. Full place, big stakes, my dinner.